So I wanted to take a couple moments and update you on some of the changes that I have implemented in Gateway, but also some of the changes that you can expect to see going forward. And so I'm just going to kind of walk through some things. The first thing you'll notice is that we're still not having this cost center populate when you get in here. So we're still needing to click on this search customer in order for that to come up. And one of the reasons I figured out why that is that if you ever were to do a job type work order from here, that the cost center is not applicable, and that is because it's all based off of the job that you're actually going to be choosing. So for instance, if I were to come in here and do a job type work order, which by the way, you won't do, that will all feed from Spectrum CRM, but understanding why this is happening. So if I were to do a search for Dan Boys, I do a search for customer, it brings up this job, I would choose this job. Well, that job already has a cost center associated with it, so it overrides this, and that's why this is not coming up. As soon as we do a site work order, however, it should be there, but the only way to get it to pop up is by clicking that search customer. As we go through here, one thing I do want to mention is how we've had some issues with technicians being able to record time to work orders, and that is a direct function of this. So one thing that you need to keep in mind is that anytime you're populating this cost center field, which you should on every time you create a work order, it always needs to be a work orders. So it's either electrical work orders, HVAC work orders, plumbing work orders. It'll never be a jobs or DDC work orders. It'll also never be corporate, and it will never be wrong cost center. So it's always going to be work orders. So you want to make sure that you're choosing the right cost center, because if for some reason we chose HVAC jobs, now this has a whole different general ledger backend to it. And because we're telling it it's a site type, but yet we're making it a job, there's a disconnect, and the technicians aren't able to record their time to that until I go into Spectrum, or you would go into Spectrum and change it to the correct cost center. That said, going forward, when we're creating our HVAC job work orders, that will be a function from CRM, and it'll feed directly into Spectrum. Those will already be in the system, and they'll pop up directly in Gateway in the dispatch board. So, but when we're creating a work order, it will always be a site type work order, because this will always be time and materials service requests. And any quoted service requests that will be site type will come from Spectrum anyways. So, but bottom line is, anytime we're coming in here, the first thing that we're going to need to do, make sure it's always site type. It defaults to that, so that's not a big deal. You'll choose whoever your customer and site is, and then making sure that your cost centers are one of the work order options. From there, a couple of other things that we've done. They are currently working on letting us bringing the terms field into the customer detail tab. So for existing customers, you'll be able to look in here and know whether or not they are a net 30 or if they're a COD. That isn't something that you'll be able to modify from this customer details tab, but it is something that you'll be able to at least see so that we can quote them appropriately when we're on the phone with them. Another thing that we've already done, you'll note here, let's see, this doesn't have any notes in it, but in the site details, first thing is I've created some other additional categories, backflows, specific notes related to backflows, because we do so many of them, and that it is site applicable. Chrissy had asked, could we create a backflow section? So there will be notes specific to the backflows at this site in this section here. I've added contract to, and I've actually already copied over the notes. So anything that was in contract to in the bottom 4 fields here, so down here, that is going to show up now in this contract note to notes section. I've already actually done it, so if you run into a site that has notes in contract to, they will pop up here. The confusing thing right now is that they're still here as well. This is where they previously were. They are still here. I wasn't able to wipe them out of the alert notes section, but when we go live, this will be blank. It will be set up for specific site alerts, That will be entered either at the time we create the order or within Spectrum. It's not something that we can change or modify here for existing sites, existing customers. This will end up being something more specific, like do not do work, or always whatever. And so, you know, specific alerts that we want to make sure that everybody can see as soon as you click on this tab. And then down here will be the more general stuff. So, okay, what did we have in contract 2? What are any general notes related to the site, hours, so on and so forth. But I've already copied over all of the contract 2 notes. If they didn't have any, I had to put something in, so it'll say note. That's what this is here. When I did the copy, if there was a blank entry for it, it wouldn't accept it. So I had to put something in there. I just put note in there. So that's already there, and we're able to utilize that as we go. They are working on site contacts so that we're able to click on a link here and we can see the additional site contacts that are within. Not sure if we're going to be able to edit them from here. I don't think we'll be able to, but at least we'll be able to see multiple site contacts, and we could put a note in here as to which person's applicable. Or we can even change this to be site contact notes, something like that. There's a lot of flexibility as it relates to adding or changing the descriptions of all this stuff here. So those are already been added. Let's see, looking at my notes here, going back to here, they are looking into making this description field longer for us so that we can see more, so that we're able to copy and paste directly into here. They are looking at making this, where is it here? When we're doing a new site, they're looking at making this longer for us. They're also looking to take this validation of the site name out completely so that you don't have to validate the site name. I'm working to figure out what the best way to create our new site codes is going to be, since it won't do it automatically for us numerically. I will come up with a best practice for us as far as the office is concerned when it comes to this validating for the site. Right now, I've seen people use their initials and the company name. You can use your initials and the date, but whatever you put in here, I'm fine with right now because we're just playing around, but I will give you the specifics of what we want that to be, as well as working with new customers, what we want that to be. They're also looking at taking away the validation here. This is a little bit more complicated because what we don't want is duplicate companies in here. So we're still kind of talking to them about that, but we are taking the validation away from the site name, and we're talking about taking away this validation for this customer name as well. A couple of other things that we're looking to automate. We're looking for, when we create new customers, for it to auto-populate with these values here, so that you don't have to do that. So one of the things I've asked is, when we come up with a new customer, can we have it just automatically populate with that information in there, so that you're not having to mess around with that. So they are working on that as well. Yeah, so I think that that's the basics of changes for the call taking. There's a bunch of different changes that we're working on when it comes to dispatch. One of the first things you'll notice is that we've created this dummy technician field. There is a dummy technician for both the plumbing, HVAC service, as well as electrical service. There's not one for the project, guys. I didn't think we needed one. We can create one if we absolutely need to, or I can simply add this dummy technician to those groups as well. But a great way for us to be able to pull calls up and drop them onto a dummy field here, and then later on, if we wanted to move that over to somebody else, we can move it from there. So that's something that is immediately available, is that dummy technician field. And for instance, let's say I was just trying to unassign this. If I wanted to do that, I would have to actually go up here and click reassign, and then go back to my dispatch board, and it should show back up over here. Shouldn't show back up over here. I'll have to look into that. It didn't pop back up over here. Oh, maybe because of the date. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so The dummy technician field is there for us to be able to use if you have questions about that. I'm interested in your feedback on that. One of the other things that we're working on is, you know how, like right now, if I wanted to click in here, I could click in here and I have access to all of this. Well, I want that same ability, but I want to be able to do it on this over here, and right now we have no ability to do that. So one of the things that they're going to do, you'll see happen, is right here they're going to put a little link and it's going to say details, and you'll be able to click on that link and it'll essentially do exactly what this does here when I click on the box. So that's coming. They will be implementing that soon. So look for that little details line here and you'll be able to pop into the specifics, and at that point you could change the dates, you can assign it, you could do whatever you would be able to do right from here as well. Going forward, some of the other stuff here. Oh, one of the questions that came up was about this date field. So you notice I had to change this. It was set from 10.5. It's going to hold whatever was here. It's going to hold whatever was here the last time you entered it. So each time we're going to have to get into the habit of updating that and refreshing so that we know that we have the most recent. Next time I come in here, however, if I were to go to new work order and then back into dispatch, it will save whatever my last date was so that you know that if you've already updated it for today, you don't have to keep updating it. It should be there. One of the questions that people had also was about canceling calls. I don't know that I want to necessarily go there to do that, but let's go to our planning sheet. Go back into September. These are already canceled, but one thing that I'll show is if you go here and right click and you hit cancel, now this one already has a canceled status. That cancels the assignment, but it doesn't cancel the work order. Now this one I mentioned was already canceled. So it's a two-step process whenever you want to cancel something. You have to cancel the assignment, but then you also have to set the dispatch job to canceled as well. Or to the work order to canceled as well. So you'll see that this has a canceled status. This is just the assignment. Remember, there's two pieces to this. There's the work order, and then there could be multiple assignments. We would need to cancel all the assignments and then cancel the work order as well. And then only then is the job going to get flagged as canceled on the board. So two-part, canceling the work order, but also canceling the assignment, but also canceling the work order. One of the things I noticed that the reports tab is not working. They're working on that to get that fixed. We're working on, where was it? Is it the find or the scheduling? Yeah, we're working on adding notes columns to this. I'm not 100% sure that we're going to be able to do it, but I do have the request in to be able to see the notes portion of this. The tough part is going to be which field, right? Because when we're working in here now, we're creating multiple different notes sections. There's the work completed, there's work order notes, and I think that this is the field I'm going to try and pull in, is the work order notes, which is going to be back and forth between the technicians in the office, so that you'll be able to see that when you get into this field here. Actually, where is it? Yeah. Actually, I'd like it to be in both work orders as well as find. Here, at least it has the description. So I am working on getting those columns added here. I think it's something we're going to be able to do. It might not happen immediately, but it's definitely something I'm working on. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes here. Just want to make sure I cover everything. Order description. Just one thing to be clear so that everybody knows. Oh yeah, I want to talk about that too. So on the dispatch board, again, to delineate between those two fields, when you're in the work order details and we start getting into this, the only ones that techs can see are these two, work completed and work order notes. I asked if we could get rid of these on our end so it doesn't confuse things, and they weren't able to remove these currently from here. That is something that they are putting a request in, and we will eventually see these two, top and bottom, go away, and all you'll have is work completed and work order notes. Work completed, this is what the technician is going to be putting in the field. It's essentially the description that you see them write on their work orders. This is something that will show up on the invoices for the customers. So this is not where we would want to put communication back and forth with the technician. That's the work order notes. And this is essentially what you're used to putting into contract 2, right in here. No, not here. I gotta pull one up. Right here, or in Zoho in the notes that you would put in. It's work order notes. So again, this is where you want to put communication back and forth with the technicians. They are able to see this, but the customer is not. The technician, this is what they did on the job. This is what will show up on the invoice. So this is not where we want to be communicating back and forth. One last thing, and I'll finish up. The one field that I think is going to be, or one tab that I think is going to be extremely helpful for you going forward is the planning tab. And what you're going to want to do is get in the habit of pulling this up either at the end of the day or the beginning of the day and looking very closely at what is left behind. So for instance, if I were looking at this, I'm on the electrical service right now, and I'm looking at last week's work, I can see here that there are only red items, and then it looks like there is one that is set to a canceled status, which is fine. But on that planning calendar, I want to make sure that nothing like this or this gets left behind, because that means that we've got unfinished work to do. Either it should be scheduled for the future, or the technician forgot to close out of it. In either case, it's going to impact their pay, especially if they forget to close out of it. So really important on this planning view to be able to look back on this on a day-to-day basis and see, did anything not get completed from last week or from yesterday, moving those forward to whatever day we plan on going back. You can even assign things to the dummy technicians on a different day if you don't know who's going to go on it. So the planning calendar, I think, is going to be an extremely valuable tool for us to look back and see and make sure that there's nothing that pops out, hey, wait a second, why is this job sitting here with an on hold status? I'm going to forget it if I don't reschedule it for the future. And that's something that you're very used to doing within Zoho. This is going to be that tool, I think, that helps us plan what our weeks look like coming up, who's going to be going on what stuff, and you're able to click into each one of these, assign it to a different technician, assign it to the dummy technician if you wanted to. All the dummy technicians will show up at the top here, and then that in turn will change what our planning board looks like going forward. So just some of the changes that have been made in Gateway, and as well as some of the changes that are coming. And then the next video I do will be related to Spectrum CRM. We have that training coming up tomorrow. So I'm excited about that piece.